In the bustling city of Lagos lived a young woman named Miriam. She was just 24 years old, yet her eyes carried the weight of many battles life had forced her to fight. Every morning, before the sun climbed high, she tied a faded scarf over her rough hair, slipped her feet into worn-out boots, and walked briskly toward the dusty construction site near her street. Miriam was not like the other workers. She carried heavy blocks on her head, pushed wheelbarrows loaded with sand, and mixed cement with a shovel as though she had been born to do it. No matter how hot the sun grew, no matter how heavy the task became, she never complained. To the people around, she looked strong, but deep inside, she was a young woman just trying to survive. Life had dealt Miriam its harshest blows at an early age. When she was only 12, tragedy struck. Her parents were returning from a visit to the village when their bus collided with a truck. Both of them died instantly. Miriam remembered the wailing, the confusion, and the emptiness that followed. No relative came forward to help. No uncle, no aunt. She was left with two younger siblings, Joseph, who was only 8, and Lydia, who had just turned 6. From that painful moment, Miriam became everything: mother, father, sister, and guardian. She had no time to mourn her childhood. Instead, she carried the burden of responsibility on her small shoulders. At first, she sold bread by the roadside, standing for long hours, shouting at passers-by. Hot bread, sweet bread was her beginning. When that wasn't enough, she washed people's clothes. Her fingers became rough and cracked from soap and water. But still, the money could not cover rent, food, and school fees. One day, with tears in her eyes, she begged a mason in her neighborhood to let her try work at a building site. He hesitated at first. "This job is too heavy for a girl," he said. But Miriam replied firmly, "Please, let me try. My siblings need me." Moved by her determination, he agreed. That was how her life as a construction worker began. The work was brutal. On some days, when her hands trembled from exhaustion, she would sit at the edge of the building foundation, looking at the clouds above. Her siblings' laughter was the only thing that kept her going. One day, she whispered to herself, "Things will change. God, please let things change." Her faith was not loud, but it was steady. Neighbors admired her courage, though many wondered how long her strength would last. Not far away in the same city lived a young billionaire named Adrian. He was 30 years old, tall, calm, and strikingly private. His photographs graced magazines. His name decorated billboards across the country. He owned 2 massive real estate companies, one in Nigeria and another in the United States. To the world, Adrian was the picture of success. Yet, behind his calm eyes, there was a hunger no wealth could satisfy. He wanted something money could not buy: genuine love. Adrian had grown up in luxury. Private schools, vacations abroad, cars, and servants had always surrounded him. But his mother, a gentle woman with soft eyes, had instilled in him one principle: respect everyone, no matter how small they look. True wealth is in kindness. Those words never left him. Unlike many of his peers, Adrian disliked noise. He stayed away from nightclubs, fake friends, and shallow relationships. He longed for a woman who saw him. Not his pocket, not his fame, not his cars, but him. He had tried dating. Many women came into his life. They were beautiful, well-dressed, and confident. But after a few weeks, their true intentions showed. They asked for expensive gifts, demanded money, and spoke more about his bank balance than about dreams, hopes, or faith. Adrian would smile politely, then step back. "This is not the one," he would say to himself. "I need a woman with virtue, a woman who understands pain, who knows life is not always easy." What Adrian did not know was that the woman he had prayed for, the one who carried all the qualities he longed to see, was not far from him at all. She was Miriam, the poor construction worker who woke up every day determined to fight for survival. Fate was already weaving their destinies together, preparing to bring their very different worlds into a surprising collision. But that meeting would not happen in the way anyone could imagine. After more than 10 years of living and working in the United States, Adrian returned to Nigeria. It was not for a show, not for attention. He wanted a quiet vacation. 2 months, just for himself, to rest, inspect some of his properties scattered around the city, and enjoy simple moments without flashing cameras. One morning, he woke up feeling unusually lighthearted. Today, I'll shop for myself. No assistants, no chauffeurs, he murmured as he pulled on a plain green t-shirt, jeans, and a cap. Taking one of his ordinary black SUVs, he drove himself out. Inside a small supermarket not far from one of his properties, Adrian moved quietly between the aisles. He picked snacks, toothpaste, and bottled water, nodding politely at the cashier. He paid for his items, slipped his black wallet into his back pocket, and walked outside with ease. The air was cool, the morning still young. But as he moved toward his car, something slipped silently from his pocket. He did not notice. That wallet contained everything: foreign credit cards, his U.S. driver's license, his Nigerian ID, business cards, and over $2,000 in cash. Without realizing it, Adrian had just dropped the most important possession he carried. That same morning, Miriam walked along the familiar dusty path toward the construction site. Her stomach growled softly. She had woken up too early and skipped breakfast. "Let me just buy a small drink before I faint on that site," she muttered to herself. She stopped by the supermarket near the main road. After carefully counting her few naira notes twice, she picked a soft drink and a packet of biscuits. She moved quietly through the store, her scarf tied neatly around her head, her boots coated with dust from the morning walk. She had no idea that destiny was waiting for her just outside those doors. As Miriam stepped out of the supermarket, something caught her eye on the ground near the parking area. A black wallet lay there, looking full and heavy. She froze. Her eyes darted left and right. Nobody seemed to be searching for anything. Her heart pounded as she bent down and picked it up. The weight surprised her. She opened it slowly, and what she saw made her lips part in shock. "Ah, money," she whispered. Foreign cash, business cards, and glossy documents filled the inside. Miriam's breath caught. Who left this here? Her first instinct was to hide it quickly and walk away. Nobody would ever know. That money could pay her siblings' school fees for years. It could buy food for the house. But as soon as the thought entered her mind, her heart rebelled. "No, this is not mine." She closed the wallet firmly. She tried to read one of the business cards, but the number carried an international code. "Who will I even call?" she asked herself aloud. She attempted to dial, but the call did not connect. Her brows furrowed. Miriam sighed deeply. She turned again, scanning the area. No man came running back. No woman shouting about a missing wallet. She stood still for a long moment, wrestling with herself. Finally, she shook her head. "If this belongs to someone, they will surely come here to ask," she whispered. Gathering her courage, she walked back into the supermarket and approached the cashier's desk. "Excuse me, ma," she said softly. "I just found this wallet outside in the parking area. I think it fell from someone's pocket." The cashier's eyes widened in disbelief. "You mean someone lost this kind of wallet?" she asked, her voice sharp with surprise. Miriam only nodded. "Yes, please give it to security. When the owner comes, let him have it back." The cashier stared at her for a long time, as though studying her face. Then she said slowly, "You are a very kind person. Most people would have taken this money and disappeared." Miriam smiled faintly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can't eat what is not mine." Without waiting for more praise, she turned and walked quietly out of the store. Meanwhile, Adrian had pulled into a petrol station not far away. "Good morning, sir. Full tank?" the attendant asked cheerfully. "Yes, please," Adrian replied. "Cash or card?" the attendant asked again. "Card," Adrian answered with a calm smile. "Then you'll have to pay first, sir," the attendant explained. Adrian nodded, reaching for his back pocket, but his smile quickly faded. His pocket was empty. He checked the other side, then his bag, then the front seat of his SUV. Nothing. A chill ran through him. His breathing quickened. "Where's my wallet?" he muttered, his face paling. The attendant looked concerned. "Sir, is there a problem?" Adrian ignored the question. He dropped to his knees and searched under the seat. He tore open his folder, scattering papers everywhere. Still nothing. His chest thudded like a drum. He stood up suddenly, jumped into the driver's seat, and muttered, "Please, God, let be there." Without explaining, he drove off in haste, heading straight back to the supermarket. The petrol attendant watched in confusion, shaking his head. Within minutes, Adrian rushed into the supermarket. His heart raced as he approached the cashier. "Excuse me," he said breathlessly. "I was here earlier. I bought some items. I think I lost my wallet. Did anyone see it?" The cashier looked him over carefully. "You're the man who bought snacks, right?" Adrian nodded quickly. "Yes, that's me." Relief began to touch his voice. The cashier smiled faintly. "A young woman found a wallet just minutes after you left. She gave it to our head of security." Adrian's shoulders dropped. "Thank God," he whispered. The cashier called out, and soon a tall man in a navy blue uniform approached. His tag read Mr. Amos. "Good morning, sir," the man greeted. Adrian forced a smile. "Good morning. I lost my wallet earlier. The cashier said someone gave it to you." Mr. Amos nodded. "Yes, but do you have proof that it belongs to you?" Adrian's voice quickened. "Yes. My business cards are inside, with my name, Adrian Cole. And there's a passport photo, too." Mr. Amos opened a drawer, pulled out the wallet, and flipped it open. He studied the cards, then the small photo tucked inside. His eyes lifted again. "You're correct, sir. This is yours." He handed the wallet back. Adrian opened it slowly, his hands trembling. Everything was there, the cash, the cards, the documents. Nothing was missing. He held it close, then asked with urgency, "Where's the lady? The one who returned this?" The cashier shook her head with a smile. "She didn't wait for thanks. She just left quietly." Adrian blinked, stunned. "She didn't even leave her number?" The cashier laughed softly. "No, sir. She wanted no reward. She just said to give it to security." Adrian stood frozen, a wave of admiration washing over him. Adrian remained at the counter for a while, his mind refusing to settle. "She didn't leave anything? Not even her name?" he asked again, as though the answer might change. The cashier shook her head. "No, sir. She only bought a drink and some snacks. Then she left." Adrian sighed deeply. He felt both grateful and restless. After a moment, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a pen. "Please," he said firmly, "if she ever comes back, give her this." He scribbled his number carefully on a slip of paper and handed it to the cashier. "Tell her I'd like to thank her personally." The cashier nodded. "Don't worry, sir. If she comes again, I'll give it to her." Adrian paused, then slipped some Naira notes onto the counter. "This is for you and the security man. Thank you for keeping it safe." Mr. Amos, the guard, grinned widely. "You're most welcome, sir. Not everyone would admit they lost something." Adrian smiled faintly, but his heart still longed to meet the woman who had returned his wallet without touching a single note. As he walked back to his SUV, he whispered to himself, "People like her are rare, so rare." That night, Adrian could not sleep. He lay on his wide bed, staring at the ceiling. The city lights leaked through his curtains, but all he saw was the face of a woman he had never met. "Who is she?" he whispered. "Why did she do it?" He thought about the thousands of women who had tried to impress him with fake smiles and sweet words. None of them had ever proven half as genuine as this stranger who had quietly returned his wallet. Adrian shook his head slowly. "I don't even know her name." 3 weeks passed. Miriam had pushed the supermarket incident to the back of her mind. She had no idea someone was searching for her. Life continued as usual. Long days on the construction site, tired evenings at home with Joseph and Lydia. One sunny afternoon, she decided to buy groceries for her siblings. She walked into the same supermarket with a small shopping trolley. Her face was tired, but her steps were steady. She didn't notice the cashier waving at her until a young man beside her tapped her arm. "Excuse me, madam. The cashier is calling you," the man said kindly. Miriam turned, surprised. The cashier hurried forward with a smile. "Good afternoon, Ma," she said. "I've been waiting to see you. Someone left this for you." She handed over a folded piece of paper. Miriam frowned in confusion. "Who gave you this?" The cashier's smile widened. "The man whose wallet you returned weeks ago. He said if you ever came back, I should give you his number." Miriam froze, her heart racing. She looked down at the folded note in her hand, then back at the cashier. "Really? After all this time, the cashier nodded. Yes. He seemed very serious about wanting to thank you. Miriam's lips curved into a small smile. She placed the paper carefully in her shopping bag and whispered, "Thank you." But as she pushed her trolley down the aisle, her mind no longer focused on groceries. Her heart kept beating faster at the thought of what the paper in her bag might mean. That evening, when Miriam returned home, she placed the shopping bag in the corner of their small apartment. She was too tired to check it again. Later, as her younger sister Lydia unpacked the groceries, she gathered all the empty paper bags and took them outside to the waste bin. She had no idea the folded note was still inside one of them. By the time Miriam remembered it the next morning, it was already gone. Her chest tightened as she called out, "Lydia, the paper I brought home yesterday, did you see it?" Lydia froze at the doorway. "Paper? You mean the one in the bag?" Miriam nodded quickly. "Yes, it had something important written on it." Lydia's face fell. "I'm sorry, sister. I already threw it away yesterday." Miriam's eyes widened. "What? Oh no." Without another word, she ran barefoot across the street to the large green bin. She flung the lid open, but it was empty. The trash collectors had already come. Miriam stood still, her chest rising and falling in panic. She looked at the empty bin and felt her knees weaken. Slowly, she sat on the pavement, staring at the ground. Tears slid down her cheeks as she whispered, "Why now, God? Why like this?" Her fingers clutched the hem of her faded dress, but after a while, she wiped her tears. She took a deep breath, lifted her head, and whispered, "If it's meant to be, it will happen again." Then she stood, forcing herself to walk back home with dignity, even though her heart was heavy. For 2 more weeks, life returned to its usual rhythm. Miriam carried blocks, mixed cement, and came home late with aching feet. She pushed the memory of the lost note away, convincing herself it was just a passing chance. Yet deep inside, a quiet hope still lingered. She would sometimes catch herself whispering, "Maybe one day, maybe." And though she tried not to expect anything, destiny was already working silently, preparing another encounter that would shake both her world and Adrian's in ways they never imagined. One Saturday morning, a gentle knock sounded on Miriam's door. It was her neighbor, Mama Kemi, smiling warmly. "Miriam," she said, "there's an outreach today at the local government secretariat. They're giving out food, books, and even drinks. A big company is sponsoring it. You should go with Joseph and Lydia." "I'll be there too." Miriam hesitated at first, but her siblings' eyes lit up at the mention of free food. She smiled faintly and said, "All right, let's go." They set out together, walking toward the busy venue. When they arrived, the field was buzzing with activity. Long lines of people stretched across the open space, waiting patiently for their turn. Volunteers handed out bottled water, beverages, and food packs. Miriam and her siblings collected theirs: a small bag of rice, some tomato paste, and a few tins of milk. Just as they were about to leave, Miriam noticed a familiar face at the refreshment table. It was the cashier from the supermarket. Her heart skipped a beat. The cashier recognized her instantly and waved excitedly. "Ah, you're the lady who returned the wallet, right?" Miriam smiled shyly. "Yes, it was me." The cashier leaned closer, lowering her voice. "You won't believe it. The man is here today. He's the one sponsoring this whole event." Miriam froze, her lips parting slightly. "Here?" she asked in disbelief. The cashier nodded eagerly. "Yes, he's right over there in the black SUV." She pointed discreetly toward the corner of the field. Miriam's heart thudded wildly. She shook her head quickly. "No, please. Don't tell him I'm here. I didn't come for that." But the cashier had already begun walking toward the SUV with a wide grin on her face. Miriam's hands grew clammy. She wanted to run, but her feet refused to move. Her siblings tugged at her arms, whispering, "Sister, what's wrong?" Miriam whispered back, "Nothing, just wait." She stood frozen, her pulse racing, as she watched the cashier bend toward the SUV and whisper something to the man inside. Moments later, the SUV door opened, and Adrian stepped out. His tall frame was unmistakable even from a distance. He looked around, and when his eyes met Miriam's, he stopped. For a second, the noise of the crowd faded. He walked toward her slowly, each step measured. Miriam's knees trembled. She lowered her eyes, but when he stopped in front of her, she forced herself to look up. His smile was gentle, his voice calm. "I finally found you," he said softly. Miriam swallowed hard. "Good afternoon, sir," she replied, her voice almost a whisper. Adrian studied her face, shaking his head in wonder. "You have no idea how long I've been trying to meet you. I left my number with the cashier weeks ago." Miriam sighed, glancing at the ground. I lost it. My sister threw it away by mistake." Adrian smiled lightly. "I'm sorry about that. But maybe today wasn't a mistake. Maybe we were meant to meet here." For a moment, silence hung between them. Then Adrian asked gently, "What's your name?" Miriam hesitated, then replied, "Miriam." Adrian repeated it softly, as though memorizing it. "Miriam," he said with a smile. "I'm Adrian." She nodded. "I know," she whispered. He chuckled. "Of course. My face is everywhere." Miriam lowered her gaze again, embarrassed. Adrian tilted his head. "How did you hear about this outreach?" She replied, "A neighbor told me. So I brought my siblings." Adrian nodded, his expression warm. "I'm glad you came. Truly." Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. "Please, type your number here," he said, holding it out. Miriam hesitated, then carefully took the phone and typed her digits. Adrian gave her a missed call immediately. "Now you have mine too," he said. Miriam's lips curved into a shy smile. "Thank you, sir." Adrian's eyes softened. "Please, call me when you get home. I'd like to talk to you properly." Before leaving, Adrian opened the back of his SUV and brought out a small brown envelope. He handed it to her quietly. "Just a little something for your groceries," he said. Miriam's eyes filled with gratitude. She clutched the envelope to her chest. "Thank you, sir." "God bless you," she whispered. Adrian smiled, nodding gently before turning back toward the organizers nearby. Miriam stood rooted to the spot, her heart still racing, her fingers trembling around the envelope. Finally, she turned and began to walk toward the main road with Joseph and Lydia. At the bus stop, they squeezed into a crowded yellow bus. Miriam placed her handbag on her lap, balancing the small bag of rice and tomato paste beside her. As the bus rattled along, she opened her bag to bring out money for the fare. She placed her phone on her lap briefly to reach the cash underneath. "Madam, pay quickly," the driver barked. Startled, Miriam hurriedly handed over the money, grabbed her groceries, and stepped down at her stop. In her rush, she forgot the one thing that had been resting on her lap, her phone. As the yellow bus pulled away, Miriam walked briskly toward her small apartment. Joseph and Lydia hurried beside her, carrying the groceries with excitement. But when Miriam entered the house and dropped her bag on the wooden table, she suddenly remembered. Her heart skipped. She reached quickly into her handbag to bring out her phone. She wanted to call Adrian as he had asked, to say thank you again. But her fingers searched and found nothing. Her chest tightened. She emptied the entire handbag onto the table. Coins, a comb, a handkerchief, and the brown envelope Adrian had given her. Still no phone. No, she whispered. Her hands began to shake. "Where is it?" Lydia looked up at her sister with confusion. "What happened?" Miriam's voice trembled. "My phone. It's gone." Joseph frowned. "But you had it in the bus." "I saw it." Miriam's eyes widened. She clapped her hand over her mouth. "Yes, it was on my lap." In panic, Miriam ran outside barefoot, dashing to the bus stop. She looked around desperately, her eyes scanning the moving buses, but the one she had entered was already gone. She asked a driver nearby, "Did you see the bus that just left? The one that stopped here?" The man shrugged casually. "Sister, buses pass every minute. How can I know which one?" Miriam's shoulders dropped. She turned slowly, her heart breaking. "I left it there," she whispered, her voice faint that night. Miriam sat silently on her small bed, her face buried in her palms. Her siblings watched her in worry. "Don't cry, sister," Lydia said softly. "Maybe God has a better plan." But Miriam shook her head. "He told me to call him, and I lost the only way." Tears spilled from her eyes. She pressed her palms together and whispered a prayer. "God, why you keep testing me like this? Why do blessings slip from my hands just when I touch them?" Meanwhile, In his large mansion across the city, Adrian sat in his study, staring at his phone. He had been waiting for Miriam's call all evening. Hours passed. He checked his call log again. Nothing. His brows furrowed. Did she change her mind? He asked himself. He paced the room slowly. No, she didn't look like someone pretending. She was sincere. He dropped heavily into his chair. So why hasn't she called? Days passed, and Miriam had no way of reaching him. She went back to work on the construction site, carrying heavy blocks as if her strength could bury her disappointment. When her co-workers teased her about always looking distant, she simply smiled faintly. But inside, she carried a wound that words could not explain. Every evening, she would glance at the brown envelope Adrian had given her, still untouched in her small box, as if holding it close could keep the memory of that meeting alive. Adrian, too, was restless. He tried to focus on his company outreach programs, his property inspections, and his meetings with staff, but his mind often drifted back to Miriam. He replayed the way she held the envelope to her chest, the humility in her voice, and the honesty in her eyes. She's not like anyone I've ever met, he whispered to himself. Yet, without her number, he was stuck. He had no idea how to trace a woman who had given him nothing but her first name. One evening, Adrian sat with his mother in the family lounge. She watched him sigh deeply and asked, Adrian, what troubles you, my son? He smiled faintly. It's nothing, Mama. But she pressed on. You've been pacing around like a man who lost something precious. Tell me. Adrian exhaled slowly. I met a woman different from all the rest. She returned my wallet weeks ago. I finally saw her again, and she gave me her number. But now, I fear I may never hear from her. His mother tilted her head thoughtfully. A woman who returns what is not hers is a rare treasure. If fate brought her to you twice, it can bring her again. Don't lose hope. Adrian smiled softly at her words. You're right, Mama. If it's meant to be, it will happen. Yet, deep in his chest, he longed to see Miriam again, not by chance but by certainty. That longing grew stronger with each day. Miriam, on the other hand, continued her routine of survival. Each morning she woke early, tied her scarf, and carried blocks until sweat drenched her dress. Each night she returned home exhausted but determined to feed her siblings. Still, her heart carried a quiet ache. Sometimes, as she lay in the dark, she whispered, maybe he waited. Maybe he wondered why I didn't call. Maybe one day I'll see him again. She did not know that Adrian, too, was whispering almost the same prayer miles away. Weeks later, Miriam was mixing cement on the site when her neighbor, Mama Kemi, rushed in. Miriam, she called, her voice full of excitement. That real estate company is doing another outreach at the stadium this Saturday. They'll be giving out school supplies for children. Bring Joseph and Lydia. Don't miss it. Miriam wiped sweat from her brow, hesitated for a moment, then nodded slowly. All right, Mama, I'll come. Something in her heart whispered that this event was not just about free books. On Saturday, the stadium was alive with music, speeches, and laughter. Children ran about with school bags, and volunteers handed out exercise books. Miriam and her siblings stood in line, collecting their share. As she turned to leave, a familiar figure caught her eye. Adrian was on stage, addressing the crowd with a microphone in his hand. He spoke with confidence, but humility. True wealth, he said, is not about money. It is about giving back, about kindness. Miriam's breath caught. Seeing him again felt like a dream. When Adrian stepped down from the stage, surrounded by staff and security, Miriam tried to slip away quietly. But fate had other plans. A volunteer suddenly pointed in her direction. Sir, isn't that the lady who helped return your wallet? Adrian's eyes followed the finger. His heart skipped when he saw Miriam standing at the edge of the crowd with Joseph and Lydia. A smile spread across his face. Without hesitation, he walked straight toward her. Miriam froze. Her siblings tugged at her arms, whispering, Sister, he's coming. Adrian stopped before her, his voice gentle but steady. Miriam. She swallowed hard. Good afternoon, sir. He smiled warmly. I thought I'd lost you again. Why didn't you call? Miriam lowered her gaze. I lost my phone in the bus that same day. Adrian blinked, then laughed softly. So that was it. I knew you couldn't have ignored me. I knew it. For the first time, Miriam smiled openly. Relief washed over her like a wave. Adrian studied her quietly for a moment. You've been carrying heavy burdens, haven't you? She shrugged faintly. Life has not been easy, but I thank God for strength. Adrian's voice softened. Miriam, you are stronger than anyone I know. And you're honest, humble, and true. Those are qualities I value more than gold. Miriam's eyes glistened. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Adrian crouched slightly to greet Joseph and Lydia. Hello, he said kindly. Joseph smiled shyly while Lydia hid behind her sister. Adrian chuckled. Don't worry, I don't bite. Miriam's heart warmed at the sight. He wasn't just polite, he was genuinely kind. Adrian stood again and looked directly at her. Please, let me give you another phone. This time, you won't lose my number. Miriam shook her head quickly. No, sir, you've done enough. But Adrian insisted gently. Miriam, it's not charity. It's a way for us to stay connected. Please accept it. Later that evening, Adrian personally delivered a new phone to Miriam at her home. Joseph and Lydia were thrilled, staring wide-eyed at the sleek device. Miriam held it in both hands, overwhelmed. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Adrian smiled. Say yes to keeping in touch. That's all I ask. She laughed softly. Yes. He saved his number on the phone, then gave her a missed call to be sure. Now, he said, nothing can separate us again. Over the following weeks, they spoke often. Adrian would call to check on her, sometimes visiting the construction site just to see her at work. Miriam, at first shy, slowly opened her heart. She told him about her parents, about the years of struggle, about the nights she cried silently while her siblings slept. Adrian listened carefully, never judging, only admiring her strength more. You are extraordinary, Miriam, he told her one evening. I've met many women, but none like you. Their friendship deepened, blossoming into something neither of them had expected.